The message from the Galactic Council arrived without warning, its contents both chilling and incomprehensible. On the screen, a peaceful star system, once thriving with trade and culture, lay in ruins. The planet, once home to billions, was nothing more than a shattered carcass, its cities reduced to glowing embers. A lone human ship, the Vanguard, hovered in the wreckage, unmoved by the destruction it had left in its wake. The transmission's final words were simple yet chilling: no survivors. Mission complete. The image faded, and in its place, the council chamber fell into stunned silence. The human race had arrived. The decision was made. No one knew why they came or what they sought, but they made it clear that they had no intention of negotiating. They didn't fight, they didn't conquer. They obliterated, with a precision and finality that no one had ever seen before. The Galactic Council, a vast assembly of races bound by the principles of peace, diplomacy, and honor, had never encountered anything like this. For eons they had maintained peace through treaties, alliances, and sometimes war, fought according to strict codes and rules of engagement. But the humans, they realized, had no such code. In their eyes, the concept of honorable combat was a joke. It wasn't about honor or strength or negotiation, it was about survival at any cost. And if the enemy had to be erased entirely, so be it. What are we dealing with? A sharp voice cut through the silence of the chamber. Councillor Thal of the Cornax, a race known for its diplomatic prowess, looked at the image of the Vanguard in disbelief. His long fingers clenched around the armrests of his chair. We can't simply ignore this. The rest of the council murmured their agreement, their faces etched with concern. The humans had not just attacked, they had destroyed everything: the infrastructure, the resources, the history. There was no attempt to capture, to negotiate, or even to win in a traditional sense. They hadn't simply fought a war, they had erased a civilization. They have no concept of peace, Councillor Lathra, the scholar of the Eldrin, remarked somberly. To them, every conflict is a threat that must be exterminated. There is no room for compromise, no space for diplomacy. The implications were clear. The humans didn't follow the same rules as the rest of the galaxy. While other species had evolved to engage in conflict with honor, diplomacy, or at the very least, restraint, humans seem to understand only one thing: total destruction. They are no different than a natural disaster, said Commander Soren of the Etherii, his people known for their legendary warriors and strict adherence to combat rituals. We do not fight with them. We do not negotiate. We avoid them at all costs. The tension in the room grew thicker as delegates from various factions spoke, their words laced with fear. But fear wasn't enough to stop the council from moving forward. The presence of the humans in the galaxy couldn't be ignored. Their fleet, small but effective, had already crossed multiple borders, leaving trails of devastated planets in their wake. What were they after? And more importantly, how could they be stopped? We must take action, Councillor Thal insisted, his voice rising above the rest. We cannot let them spread their destructive ways across the galaxy. If we do nothing, we risk our own survival. The council chamber went quiet as they processed his words. The decision had to be made. There was no turning back now. The humans had arrived, and they had made their intentions clear. A new era had begun, one where old rules of warfare would be put to the test, and the very foundations of galactic peace would be shaken. What the council didn't realize was that this wasn't a simple invasion. This was something far more dangerous. Humanity wasn't here to conquer. They were here to destroy. And they weren't going to stop until they had erased every last trace of opposition. The Galactic Council convened again, this time in a special emergency session. The room was filled with a palpable unease as each representative took their seat. The news from the humans was spreading like wildfire across the galaxy, and no one knew what to make of it. Some of the older members of the council, those who had lived through countless wars, remained silent, their faces hard to read. Others, especially the younger races, were visibly unsettled. Everyone had heard the same stories, the reports of human ships tearing through systems, attacking without warning, destroying everything in their path. But it was not the destruction itself that terrified them, it was the way the humans seemed to approach it. There were no long sieges, no tactical maneuvers, no grand battles. No attempt at negotiation, no chance for diplomacy. Just one clean sweep of annihilation. No enemy was spared. We have been monitoring their actions closely, Councillor Kivrin, a high-ranking diplomat from the Zalthar species, spoke first, his voice calm but heavy with concern. Their methods are unprecedented. No race in our history has ever acted with such utter disregard for the rules of engagement. His tentacles twitched nervously, a subtle gesture that only those familiar with Zalthar body language would recognize. But what do they want? Counselor Lathra, the Eldrin scholar, asked, her soft-spoken voice cutting through the room. What motivates them to wipe entire civilizations from existence without even the courtesy of a warning? We have seen war before, but this is something else entirely. There was a long pause before another voice broke the silence. Captain Valos of the Etherii stood, his face cold and expressionless, but his words sharp. They have no need for a motive, he said, his tone full of disdain. Humans do not fight for glory or resources. They do not fight for honor or survival as we understand it. They fight to destroy. They have no code, no rules, no tradition. Just eradication. The council sat in stunned silence. The Etherii, known for their warrior culture, had seen their fair share of brutal conflict, but even they could not fathom the kind of aggression the humans wielded. They will not negotiate, Captain Valos continued. They will not back down. And they will never fight with any sense of honor. If we do not act, they will burn through the galaxy like wildfire, and nothing will be left in their wake. His words lingered in the air like a bitter storm cloud. It was a harsh reality the council had to face. Humanity didn't see battle the way other species did. For centuries, war had been a complex dance of strategy, alliances, and understanding the enemy. It was about knowing when to fight and when to hold back. But humanity, as it turned out, was not interested in such things. They fought with unrelenting ferocity, with no regard for the consequences, and no intention of leaving anything behind. We cannot simply allow this to continue, Counselor Thal of the Kornax said, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. We must find a way to make them understand that we are not their enemies. We must. Stop, interrupted a quiet voice from the corner. It was the human envoy, Captain Adrian Fisk. Until now he had said little, his presence barely noticed as the council deliberated. But now his calm words seemed to halt the entire room. Everyone turned toward him. You don't understand, Fisk said simply, his voice cold and measured. We don't do this because we hate you. We don't do this because we're angry. We do it because we can. Because we have to. Because it's the only way we know to survive. The galaxy is full of threats, things far worse than us. And if we don't eliminate them before they become a problem, you'll be left with nothing but ashes. His words hung in the air like a thunderclap. The room fell silent once again. We do not fight like you do, Fisk continued. We do not wait for the enemy to strike first. We don't take chances. When we fight, we end it. We end it quickly, decisively. We wipe out every trace of threat because we know there will always be more. So don't mistake our actions for aggression. This is not war as you know it. It's survival. His words sent a ripple through the room, leaving the council members frozen in place. The humans had come into the galaxy with an alien philosophy of war, one that left no room for mercy, no room for second chances. They weren't here to conquer, to negotiate, or to follow the ancient traditions of galactic combat. They were here to destroy. And the rest of the galaxy had better understand that before it was too late. The tension in the council chamber was palpable, the weight of humanity's arrival pressing heavily on every delegate's shoulders. A quiet murmur ran through the room as each species attempted to process the magnitude of the situation. There had been wars in the past, countless conflicts between the various galactic races, but never had there been an adversary like this. Humanity's methods of destruction were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, cold, efficient, and devoid of honor. The old rules of engagement didn't apply. We must act, Counselor Thal said, his voice cutting through the growing unease. We cannot allow a race like this to threaten the balance we've fought so hard to maintain. His words echoed in the chamber and all eyes turned toward him. The Kornax diplomat, usually a voice of reason, had been one of the first to grasp the full implications of humanity's arrival. We have no choice. If they are allowed to continue, they will destabilize everything we have built. The room fell silent, the enormity of his statement sinking in. The Galactic Council had been a bastion of peace for millennia, a forum where races of all backgrounds could resolve conflicts without resorting to bloodshed. But humanity's brutal approach had shattered that illusion. The humans weren't interested in diplomacy. They weren't interested in fighting for resources or glory. They didn't even believe in the concept of honorable combat. They destroyed. Efficiently. Relentlessly. And with every planet they reduced to ash, they left an unmistakable message. We do not negotiate. We do not compromise. The other races of the galaxy were left stunned, unsure of how to respond. Captain Valos, the grizzled warrior from the Etherii, stood next, his cold eyes narrowing as he surveyed the room. What we're dealing with is not a species that can be reasoned with. We are used to fighting battles, to taking risks, to engaging in conflict with some measure of restraint. But the humans, they simply eradicate anything they deem a threat. His voice was firm, the harsh truth of his words cutting through the room. They are not like us. They don't care for honor or tradition. They fight without hesitation, and their methods are so efficient that they leave nothing behind. We cannot fight them the way we fought the Xylars or the Orphanons or even the Relthian raiders. There is no back and forth, no strategy to outmaneuver them. There is only destruction. His words hit like a hammer, and for the first time, the council felt the true weight of the humans' presence. They didn't just fight to win. They fought to obliterate. Then what do? Councillor Kivrin, the Zalthar representative, asked, his voice tinged with desperation. We cannot simply ignore them. But we cannot match their brutality. We would lose. There was a heavy pause as all eyes turned toward the humans' envoy. Captain Adrian Fisk, who had quietly watched the proceedings up until now, stood from his seat and approached the central podium. His posture was relaxed, almost casual, as though the deliberations around him were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. What you don't understand, Fisk said, his voice calm but laced with an undercurrent of authority, is that we don't care about glory. We don't fight for honor. We fight because we must. His words struck a chord with the council. They weren't meant as threats but as a simple statement of humanity's core belief: survival. You see, we've fought wars before, Fisk continued, and we've learned that letting an enemy live, letting them regroup or rebuild, is a mistake. We do not believe in half measures. If we see a threat, we remove it. Completely. The council gasped, horrified by the implication. That's madness, Councillor Lathra, the Eldrin scholar, whispered, though her voice carried across the chamber. Fisk's gaze hardened, but his expression remained unchanged. It's not madness. It's survival. If we do not destroy what threatens us, we will be destroyed. We have learned that lesson the hard way. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. You can call it madness or cruelty or whatever you wish. But it works. And that's why we do it. There was a long silence as the council digested the reality of Fisk's words. They weren't dealing with an enemy seeking conquest or power. They were dealing with a species that had been forged in the crucible of relentless survival, one that had learned through bitter experience that there could be no mercy. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and humanity had learned to deal with that danger in the most final of ways. And what do you expect from us? Captain Valos finally asked, his voice low and resigned. Fisk met his gaze with an unwavering stare. We don't expect anything. We're not here to make alliances or to bend the knee to your codes. We're here to ensure our survival. And if you want to live, you will stay out of our way. With that, he turned and left the chamber, his words hanging heavily in the air. The council was left in stunned silence, unsure of how to move forward. The humans had made their position clear. Now the galaxy had to decide whether it would bend to humanity's unyielding will or stand in opposition and risk total annihilation. You said. The Galactic Council had reached an impasse. No one knew what to do next. The threat posed by humanity was no longer theoretical. It was real and it was growing. In every corner of the galaxy, human fleets moved unchecked, their methods of destruction indiscriminate and terrifying. Yet the Council could not simply sit by and allow this to continue. Humanity's blatant disregard for galactic law was a challenge to the very fabric of peace that had held the galaxy together for centuries. The debate in the Council chamber raged on, a cacophony of conflicting voices and rising tension. We cannot allow this to continue, Councillor Thal insisted, his voice cracking with frustration. If we do not act now, we risk the very existence of all we've worked for. The humans will not stop until they've destroyed everything we hold dear. And what can we do? Councillor Kivrin, the Zalthar representative, countered. We have no military might capable of taking them on. We have no strategy, no leverage. If we confront them, we will be annihilated. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The reality was undeniable. Humanity's ability to obliterate entire civilizations with cold efficiency had outstripped anything the galaxy had ever encountered. The Aetherii, the most formidable warriors in the galaxy, had faced humanity's fleet in skirmishes, and even they had been left stunned by the humans' methods. The humans did not fight to win. They fought to end things swiftly and decisively. There was no room for negotiation, no hope for peace. There is no question of defeating them, Captain Valos of the Aetherii said, his voice steady but tinged with a hard edge. We may be warriors, but we do not fight the way they do. They fight with no mercy, no honor. We cannot play by the old rules. A grim silence settled over the chamber as Valos's words sank in. The warriors of the Etherii had long been the defenders of the galaxy's peace, their honor code considered the pinnacle of combat discipline. But humanity had shattered that notion. The humans didn't fight for honor. They didn't fight for glory. They fought for survival, and in their eyes that survival meant eliminating threats before they could grow. So what do? Counselor Lathra, the Eldrin scholar, asked. She had long been a voice of reason within the council, but now her voice held a note of desperation. We have no way of stopping them. Their warships are beyond anything we have encountered. The council was silent for a long moment, each delegate wrestling with the harsh reality of their situation. Then a quiet voice broke through the tension. It was Fisk. The human envoy had remained silent for much of the debate, observing the chaos around him. Now he spoke, his voice cutting through the air with unnerving calmness. You don't understand, he said simply. You cannot stop us. We are not here to make alliances or to follow your rules. We are here to ensure our survival. And if you stand in our way, you will be erased just like the rest. His words were blunt, and the finality in his tone sent a chill through the council. You're wrong, Counselor Thal said, his voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. We are the Galactic Council. We have the power to stop you. You cannot simply walk over us. Fisk met his gaze with unflinching resolve. You misunderstand. You cannot stop what you cannot comprehend. We don't fight like you do. We don't follow your rules. We end things before they become problems. And if you try to stand against us, you will find out what that means. The room fell deathly silent. Fisk's words hung in the air, heavy with the threat they carried. It was not an idle boast. The humans had already demonstrated their ability to destroy entire civilizations in a single, decisive blow. The council had seen the evidence, but now, faced with the human envoy's unwavering certainty, it hit them with terrifying clarity. So, what is it you want from us? Captain Valos asked, his voice low and edged with exhaustion. Fisk stood tall, his posture unyielding. We don't want anything from you, he said, his tone almost indifferent. We're not interested in your politics, your diplomacy, or your peace treaties. We don't care about your rules. We only care about survival. And if you want to ensure your place in this galaxy, you will stay out of our way. The gravity of his statement settled on the council like a shroud. Humanity had not come to negotiate. They had not come to conquer, at least not in the traditional sense. They had come to ensure that they were the last ones standing. The other races in the galaxy could either adapt to this new reality or be crushed beneath the weight of humanity's relentless will. The question that lingered in the minds of the council was whether they could find a way to coexist with such a force, or whether humanity would inevitably destroy everything they had worked for. The room fell into a heavy silence, the hum of nervous energy hanging in the air as the council faced a bitter truth. Humanity had made its intentions clear, and there was no room for diplomacy. The question now wasn't whether the humans would destroy the galaxy, it was whether they would leave anything for the rest of the species to fight for. The peace that had existed for millennia felt increasingly fragile, threatened by a force that refused to play by any known rules. Counselor Thal stood, his normally composed expression fractured by a mixture of fear and resolve. We cannot ignore this any longer, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. The humans will not stop until they've eradicated all threats. And if we wait too long to act, we may very well be the next target. His words were met with reluctant nods. The reality was grim, there was no guarantee that humanity would spare anyone. The humans' history was one of unyielding destruction, their philosophy rooted in the idea that survival meant eliminating all potential threats before they had a chance to grow. The council had been struggling with their next move for weeks, debating whether to confront the humans head-on or seek another solution. But now it seemed there were no more options. We must meet them with force, Captain Valos of the Etherii said, his voice harsh and resolute. If we do not stand against them, they will burn through this galaxy until nothing is left. Our only chance is to show them that we are not weak, that we will not allow them to impose their will on us without consequence. The Etherii had been a cornerstone of galactic defense for centuries, their warriors the most feared across known space. But even they were apprehensive when it came to confronting the human fleet. The humans did not fight like any species they had encountered. They did not care about the honor of battle, the strategy of war, or the lives of those they destroyed. They simply obliterated anything they deemed a threat. And yet, we are not prepared, Counselor Lathra said, her voice quiet, but tinged with frustration. We have never faced an adversary like this. Our fleets, our weapons, they are nothing compared to what the humans have shown us. To engage them directly would be suicide. The room grew heavy with unease as the truth sank in. No one present had the strength or resources to defeat the humans in a direct confrontation. The Etherii had the greatest warriors, the Zalthar the most advanced diplomacy, and the Eldrin the most intricate strategies, but none of that seemed to matter when facing an enemy that cared nothing for such things. The humans had already demonstrated that they could end a conflict in minutes, reducing entire systems to ash before their enemies even knew what hit them. Then what? Councillor Kivrin asked, his voice hollow. We cannot fight them, but we cannot stand aside and let them destroy everything we've worked for. What other choice do we have? The silence that followed was deafening. The council had reached a crossroads and there was no clear path forward. Each species, each faction, faced an enemy so alien in its methods and its purpose that no one knew how to respond. We could try to meet them on their terms, Councillor Thal suggested, his voice barely audible. We could offer them a seat at the table, attempt to reason with them, understand their goals. Perhaps they seek something that we can give them, something other than destruction. But even as he spoke, it was clear that the rest of the council was unconvinced. The humans had made it clear that they were not interested in diplomacy, and every attempt at engagement had been met with cold indifference. They did not seek alliances. They did not care about the rules. We cannot afford to be weak, Captain Valos growled. We must show them that we are not afraid to defend ourselves. If we bend now, they will see it as weakness. And if they think we are weak, they will come for us next. It was a stark truth, one that hung over the room like a storm cloud. Then we fight, said Fisk, stepping forward, his voice cutting through the debate with unsettling finality. You all talk about peace and strategy, but the reality is simple. If you want to survive, you have to destroy the threat before it grows. And right now that threat is humanity. His words were met with shocked silence. It was as though the human envoy had just delivered a final, unforgiving verdict on the galaxy's way of life. The Council had spent centuries cultivating peace, creating a galaxy where war was a last resort. But humanity's arrival had upended everything. And now the question wasn't how to make peace, it was how to survive in a galaxy where total destruction had become the only solution. The Council knew the fight ahead would be like no other. They could no longer rely on old methods, on the rules of war they had spent eons perfecting. Humanity had shattered those rules, and now they had to find a new way forward. But the most terrifying question of all was whether they could find a way to stop humanity, or whether, in the end, they would be swept away by the unstoppable tide of destruction humanity had unleashed. The galaxy was about to change, and no one knew whether it would ever recover. The council chamber was still, a heavy silence hanging in the air as the delegates pondered the reality they now faced. The meeting had gone on for hours, but every strategy, every potential solution seemed futile. Humanity had made its position clear. They had come to ensure their survival, and in doing so, they would destroy any obstacle in their path, no matter the cost. What remained now was a terrifying truth. Humanity had no interest in diplomacy, no interest in negotiation. They would not bend. The rest of the galaxy was left to decide whether to fight back or to concede. Councillor Thal's voice broke the silence. We are running out of time, he said, his face grim. Every day that passes, humanity moves further into the galaxy, leaving devastation in their wake. If we do not act now, there will be nothing left to protect. His words echoed through the room, striking a chord with every delegate present. It was a reality that had become too apparent to ignore. Humanity was unstoppable. We can't continue like this, Councillor Lathra added, her normally calm demeanor now laced with frustration. Every solution we've discussed, every peacekeeping measure we've proposed, none of it has worked. The humans are not interested in any form of compromise. We have to face the truth. They are a force that must be confronted head-on, or we will all be wiped out in the end. The room fell into a tense quiet once again. There were no more words of hope or diplomacy, only the stark understanding that if the galaxy wanted to survive, it had to change its entire way of thinking. Captain Valos, ever the warrior, was the first to speak. The Etherii have always fought for honor. We have fought against invaders, conquerors, and enemies of peace. But we have never faced anything like the humans. They do not care about honor. They do not care about the rules. They care only about survival, and they will stop at nothing to secure it. The weight of his words landed hard in the chamber. The Etherii were known throughout the galaxy as the ultimate warriors, but even they felt powerless in the face of humanity's indifference to the codes of war. Humanity didn't care if they were perceived as merciless. They didn't care about victory or defeat. They cared only about erasing threats. I have seen their fleet, Captain Valos continued. and I have fought against their ships. They don't fight for glory, for power, or for resources. They fight to end it, to destroy everything in their path. He paused, his gaze hardening. We will never win by following the old ways. The question now is, what are we willing to do to survive? There was a moment of silence, and for the first time, the council seemed to recognize that they were at the mercy of an enemy that could not be reasoned with. The humans do not respect our ways, Councillor Kivrin of the Zalthar said softly. They do not honor our peace, our laws. They destroy without hesitation, without remorse. If we do not act, we will be erased, just like every other civilization they've encountered. The room was heavy with the weight of their collective realization. They had been living under the illusion that war could be avoided, that diplomacy would always be the answer. But humanity had shattered that illusion. The human philosophy of preemptive destruction was so foreign to everything the galaxy had come to know that no one knew how to react. Then we must fight, Councillor Thal said, his voice resolute. We may not be able to stop them using our old methods, but we must try. We must show them that the galaxy will not fall without a fight. The sentiment was met with reluctant agreement, but deep down, every member of the council knew that this fight would be unlike any war they had ever fought. This was not about territory, resources, or power. It was about survival. We will need a new strategy, Captain Valos said, his voice grim but firm. We cannot fight them the way we fought previous wars. We must strike first, without hesitation and without mercy. The council debated long into the night, discussing new tactics and the formation of alliances that might allow them to stand against the human threat. But deep down they all knew that this was no ordinary conflict. This was a battle for the very survival of the galaxy, and the stakes had never been higher. As the final deliberations were made, the council could not shake the gnawing feeling that humanity's arrival had fundamentally changed everything. The galaxy had prided itself on peace, on diplomacy, and on maintaining balance. But now, in the face of the human threat, that balance seemed fragile, on the verge of collapse. The final words of Captain Fisk echoed in their minds, words that would haunt them long after the meeting ended. If you want to ensure your place in this galaxy, you will stay out of our way. The council knew they could no longer afford to ignore the humans. They had to act, or risk everything they had built and perhaps even their very existence. The decision was made. The galaxy would fight. But in the back of every mind, there was one question that lingered: would it be enough?